Okay. Okay, so why don't we start by just taking a moment to set our intention for today, our motivation, and to think that the reason we're coming together is that we want to derive some benefit from this time. And the benefit that we want to derive is not limited just to the duration of the meeting. We wanted to expand forward into the future as far as possible. Right? Be a start for our minds to change in directions that we want. Maybe so that we may increase our compassion and our wisdom, so that the benefit can also expand out towards those around us as far as possible. So for that reason, let's check in. Let's talk. So how have you guys been, first of all? Well, that's not a fair question to ask of in a Zoom group, is it? I hope you guys have been well, let's put it that way. But one question I do want to ask is, did folks have a chance to meet last week to practice when I wasn't able to be here? Was anybody able to come and try? Oh, okay, that's fine. Has anybody had a chance to practice the debate format that we talked about in any other context?
Okay. I had a review session with one of the girls that I'm doing Discovering Buddhism with, and one of our questions was how did we know that mind was different to the brain? And it was actually really useful using that same logic because I said to my colleague, I know the answer I should be giving, but I'm not sure that that's my answer, if that makes sense. And actually working through those steps helped make it my answer, because it was, actually I get it. Yeah, I do believe that.
That's the point. That's exactly right. Like, this can help us transform like statements that we kind of take on faith, like break it down and see if we really agree with it or not. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. What about the chapter in the book? Did you guys have any questions?
Yes, I have a lot of questions, not one. So
I'm sorry?
I have a lot of questions because I read that, but I don't know whether I understood many things, because it is like reading a thesis, not like a book. So for me, at least. So I read it, but I don't know how far I understood, like maybe 10%.
Okay. I thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yes. So, okay. So I think I mentioned last time that there's this monk, Venerable Donyo, who is with Sarah J. And he debates there, and he started a debate training program for lay people who are interested and so forth. And he heard about what we're doing and he reached out anyway. So we've been talking, and in talking to him, I came to realize, so he pointed out something, and I came to realize that Daniel Perdue, who wrote the book that we're using, he taught Tibetan debate in an academic Western context with like the Department of Philosophy. So what Daniel Perdue, like, this is kind of what finally clicked for me. What Daniel Perdue was trying to do is he was trying to take people who already had like a lot of had spent a lot of time thinking of logic from a Western point of view, and tried to show how this correlates to the Tibetan way of thinking about logic, right? But if we're not academics who have spent a lot of time thinking about Western logic, then trying to go through this book is trying to learn two things at the same time, and trying to learn like what something is by realizing what something isn't, but first have to realize what it isn't, what it is, if you follow that. Which I didn't. But so I think that's cemented for me that while this is I mean, I'm very grateful to this book. I think it's a fantastic course. It might not be set up in the most user-friendly way for us. So we will veer away from it. I think it's a fantastic resource to have. I'm happy you guys have it. The definitions, you can, you know, like the definitions as they're given, you can use everything that's written there, of course, I mean, it is correct. But I think let's stray a little bit from that chapter by chapter format, and let's just kind of talk about how to debate. Is that fair? Okay. All right. So in light of that, then, I think what we can do is we can just review the main strategy of debate, like the main mechanism of debate, like we started to do last time, right? Because this is the thing that if you understand how to do this and you practice how to do this, you'll be able to debate, right? And again, it comes back to this. There's a challenger or clarifier, but they're a challenger and a defender, right? They each have different roles. The debate is ostensibly for the sake of the defender. Both people are going to benefit, but the debate is for the sake of the defender, okay? The defender is somebody who believes something, and the challenger is going to help them figure out like, are you sure you believe this? Why do you believe this? You know, like, have you thought it all the way through, and so forth and so on? Is there something you're misunderstanding? Is there something you haven't thought of? So the challenger is mostly going to do this. Well, the challenger is going to do this in two ways. One is by basically asking some questions to get some information, to get some material, but we'll set that aside for now. The main thing the challenger is going to do is the challenger is going to fling consequences at the defender. Okay, like, so that means that they're going to take what the defender is saying, and they're going to say, ha ha ha, if you believe that, then it follows that blah, 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 you know? And then the defender is going to respond to that, right? I apologize if I'm like retreading stuff we've already talked about, but I think it's good to have that context kind of clear in the mind. So again, there's two types of consequence that the challenger can fling. One type of consequence is what I'm going to call a simple consequence. Okay, a simple consequence is it's just a statement preceded by it follows that. You know, it's like, it follows that the subject, the sky, it is blue. You know, it follows that whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal. You know, it's just, I'm just making a claim, and I'm just saying that it follows that. All right. Even though I'm saying it follows that, the truth is it doesn't necessarily have to follow. I could say anything as the challenger. I really have a lot of freedom. I could say anything. There's a technical reason why I'm saying it follows that. We're not going to worry about that for now. You know, the person's claim could be that, you know, whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal. That's the defender's claim, and I could come at them and say, it follows that the subject, the sky, it is blue. You know, that's fair. That's fair. If a challenger flings a simple consequence like that, then there's only two things that the defender can say, right? They can say, I accept, which means, like, if I say it follows that the sky is blue, the defender can say, I accept, which means I accept that the sky is blue, right? Or the defender can say why, right? By saying why, they're basically saying, I don't accept that the sky is blue. So either convince me, or else let's assume that it isn't. Either way is fair, right? Again, because it's a debate for the sake of clarifying things, we're going to, you know, the defender has to pick an option to test out to see what would happen if they went with that option. So the defender either has to accept that the sky is blue or has to accept that the sky is not blue. there's no third option here, right? So like if you're not sure that the sky is blue, then let's see what happens if it's not blue. Is everybody with me so far? Awesome. One other thing, there have been a lot of very helpful things in talking to Venerable Donyu, and one other thing that was very helpful is he suggested that I modify the way that I say, like just the order of the words in the statement to make it closer to the Tibetan versus the way Daniel Perdue does it. And in talking to him, I've come to realize like he's totally right. He's absolutely right. So instead of Daniel Perdue would say, it follows that the subject, the sky, is blue. Better to say the subject, the sky. It follows that it is blue. Right? This is actually important, as it turns out. So we're going to set out the subject first. We're going to be very clear. What is the subject that we're talking about? The subject, the sky, it follows that it is blue. The subject, Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal. Right? So if I say the subject, Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal. If the defender says, I accept, then we've established Snoopy is a mammal. That's in the public record now. If I say the subject Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal, and the defender says why, I have to, now I as the challenger, I have a couple of choices. I could say it follows that it is not a mammal, and then the defender has to accept that, because they have to accept one or the other, right? Or I can say it follows that it is a mammal because it is a dog, right? And now I'm giving a reason. Now I'm giving a reason, okay? So that brings us to the other type of consequence. So one type of consequence is the simple consequence. I'm just saying it follows, and I'm just saying a statement with the words it follows in there, right? That's a simple consequence. The other type of consequence is a consequence with a reason. So now if I give a consequence with a reason, which you'll know I'm doing if I use the word because, right? Then the defender now has three choices because we want to cover all possible logical bases, right? So if I say the subject Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal because it is a dog. Now the defender has three options. They can either think about it and say, okay, it's true that Snoopy is a dog, and it's true that whatever is a dog necessarily is a mammal. Okay, then I guess it's true that Snoopy is a mammal. And if they think all of that, then they'll say, I accept. All right. If they accept, they're accepting three things. Okay, the subject Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal because it is a dog. They're accepting three things. They're accepting that Snoopy is a dog. They're accepting that whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal. And they're accepting that Snoopy is a mammal. If they don't really accept any one of these three things, then they can't say, I accept, right? So what else can they say? So there's two other things that they can say. The two other things that they can say is the reason is not established. The reason is not established. In that example, the subject Snoopy, it follows here. You know what? Let me actually put it in the chat so I don't have to keep saying it. The subject Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal because it is a dog. Okay, that's the consequence that I'm discussing right now. So if in response to that consequence, if the defender says the reason is not established, what they're saying is, I do not accept that Snoopy is a dog. You haven't established that Snoopy is a dog, right? Dog is the reason there. Dog is the sign, the reason. So the reason is not established means dog hasn't been established of the subject Snoopy. Okay? Any questions about that? About what it means to say the reason is not established?
So the reason is not established always refers to this last part of the consequence with the reason. Yeah?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So the subject is the subject. The subject is fixed, right? That's part of why we're setting it apart in the beginning. The subject Snoopy. That's what we're talking about for now. Until further notice, everything we say is going to be related to the subject Snoopy, right? So then if I say it follows that it is a mammal because it is a dog, to say the reason is not established means, okay, no, dog isn't true when we're talking about that subject. Right? Or it hasn't been established that it's true when we're talking about that subject. The subject is Snoopy. We don't know that it is dog, right? Now, if you think that it's true that Snoopy is a dog, if you accept that, you have another thing you can say is there is no pervasion. There is no pervasion means that, okay, it is a dog, but it doesn't follow that if it is a dog, it is necessarily a mammal. Dog doesn't prove mammal. Being a dog doesn't prove that it is a mammal. To say that you say there's no pervasion. So if you say there is no pervasion, if you think about it, there's like there's an additional kind of consequence to what you're saying, which is that there is at least one thing in the world that is a dog but is not a mammal. Right? You're saying being a dog doesn't prove that it's a mammal. That means there are some things that could be a dog that aren't a mammal. So those are the three possible answers that the defender can give to a complete consequence that has a reason. Okay? So once again, if I give a simple consequence that's just a statement that has the words it follows in it, so a simple consequence, the two things you can say is I accept, or you can say why. If you say why, maybe I'll give you a reason, or maybe I'll state the opposite, in which case you have to accept that, right? If I give you a full reason if I give you a full consequence with a reason, then either you can say I accept, or you can say the reason is not established, or you can say there is no pervasion. So when you hear, if you're the defender, when you hear a consequence that has a reason in it, the first thing you want to do in your mind is you want to check, is the reason established? That's the first step. So, the subject, the ocean, it follows that it is milk because it is wet. The subject, the ocean, it follows that it is milk because it is wet. So first of all, is it true that the ocean is wet? Right? Is it true that the ocean is wet? Yes. Now you ask, okay, is it true that wet proves that it's milk? Is it true that if it is wet, then it is necessarily milk? No. So then you'd say there is no pervasion. So in that case, there's no pervasion means I accept that the ocean is wet, but that being wet does not mean that it's milk. Right? On the other hand, if I said the subject, take the subject, the ocean, it follows that it is wet because it is mercury, so the first thing you do is you'd ask yourself, okay, hold on a minute, is it true that the ocean is mercury? And the answer is no. So you'd say the reason is not established. It doesn't matter whether, if it's mercury, it's wet. It doesn't matter whether the ocean is wet. You have to take them one at a time. First, is the reason established? Then, is there pervasion? And if the reason is established and there is pervasion, then you don't have to check anything else. You have no choice but to accept that the consequence is true. If it is true that A is B, and if it is also true that whatever is B is necessarily C, then you have to accept that A is C. Questions? Okay, so let's try this out. You guys are all going to be the defender, okay? So here you go. Take the subject, paper. It follows that it is organic because of being made of wood.
There is no pervasion.
There is no pervasion. So let's think about it together. What does it mean in this case to say there is no pervasion? So the first thing we do is we say, okay, the subject, paper, it follows that it is organic because it is made of wood. So the first thing to do is to check, is the reason established? Is paper made of wood? Right? So if we're going to go with yes. Okay, so that's fine. So then the next thing is to say, well, is it true that whatever is made of wood is necessarily organic? To say that there's no pervasion means that's not true. It is not true that whatever is made of wood is necessarily organic, right? And so that's Theo's statement, right? So Theo, from what you're saying, right, a logical consequence of that is that there are things made of wood that are not organic, right? So can you give another example?
So, okay, do I have to respond with a consequence with a reason, or sorry, I'm a bit rusty.
No. You are the defender, so you don't get to say any consequences.
Oh, okay.
Right? You only get to do two things. You only get to give one of those 5 stock answers that we've talked about.
Okay.
Or you get to answer a question that I ask you directly. And I'm asking you directly, can you give an example?
Oh, right. Okay.
See?
A wooden toothpick. I don't know, an inorganic, a non-organic wood toothpick.
An organic wood toothpick. Okay, great. You've done your job.
What are we establishing as organic though? Are we establishing that trees are organic by nature, so therefore anything made of a tree will be organic, so there is a pervasion? Or are we saying that it might have a bit of metal, it might be half metal wood pick and half wood pick, in which case it wouldn't be organic because part of it isn't organic? How do we know?
If I answered that, if I had an answer for that, there wouldn't be debate. Right? That's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to try to find out. You know, so what we just did would be like the starting point of a debate that Theo and I would have. You know, this isn't the end. Like, you know, nothing has been proven, you know, yet. Like, this isn't the end of the debate, but this is where we would start. You know, so then I might say to Theo something like, it follows that there is a definition of organic. Let's make all of you guys the defender, right? So feel free to jump in, anybody, and answer. It follows that there is a definition of organic.
Why?
Why? It follows that there is not a definition of organic. Now you have to accept, right? That's the rule. If you say y to 1, then you have to accept the opposite, right? So you'd say, I accept. And then I'd say, okay, take the subject organic. It follows that there is no way of knowing whether something is it or not, because there is no definition of it.
Okay,
Can
wait.
I ask a question? Sorry.
No, it's not important. You go ahead. Sorry.
Who was asking?
I had a question. What if the defender gets it wrong? And
What if the defender gets it wrong, right? Well,
yeah,
we hope the defender gets it wrong. Otherwise, the debate will end in 2 seconds, right?
but But what if the defender said why and then had to accept the opposite, which they then realize is wrong, and then where does that leave the challenger or the clarifier?
Yes. Okay, no, that's great. So here's the idea. The idea is that if the defender accepts something that is wrong, the challenger's job is going to be to show them why it's wrong. You know, like, how do we know it's wrong? Like, I'm going to show you your mistake, you know? So if somebody accepted, I don't know, like if somebody said, if I said, take the subject of triangle, it follows that it's a shape. And the person said, why? They said, take the subject triangle, it follows that it is not a shape. They'd have to accept, right? It's a mistake, so they'd have to accept it. So I'd say, okay, take the subject triangle. It follows that it is not a three-sided shape because it is not a shape. I'm showing them a consequence of what they're saying. It follows that it is not a three-sided shape because it is not a shape. So hopefully at that point, they go, oh crap, right? Oh crap, I've made a mistake. And if they didn't, we would get there. It would just take a little longer. That's the point. We'll get there, right? Let's say, oh no, I made a mistake, right? So if they realize, so if they realize they made a mistake, now you're always gonna answer based on what you actually think is the case in that moment, based on what you actually realize to be the case in that moment, right? So if you say, oh man, no, okay, I was wrong, a triangle is a shape. So again, so now the consequence that I flung was, take the subject, a triangle. It follows that it is not a three-sided shape because it is not a shape. Then you'd give the correct answer, which is the reason is not established. This flies in the face of what you said a moment ago, but you've now seen the light. So you have to answer it the truth. Say, oh, the reason is not established, right? And so then I would just to make sure that that's what you mean, I'd say, then it follows that the subject triangle, it follows that it is a shape. And you'd say, I accept.
So back to the tree, there has to be a definition of organic because there has to be a definition of everything. So you can't accept that there's not a definition of organic.
Right.
So then what do you say?
So
we just need to define what organic is, because what are we defining organic is not because necessarily we don't know, but in this context, we need to make sure that we are all in agreement as to what is organic, because in my mind, a tree is organic. It can't not be organic. I mean, I know you get organic tomatoes and not organic tomatoes, but yeah, unless it's like a genetically modified tree, then is that organic?
So that's the point. And the beauty of it is that we don't even have to agree. We don't even have to agree. That's why it's a concept. Anyway, but we don't even have to agree. All that matters is that you as the defender be clear or get clear on what you mean, right? And then if you're making a mistake, I as the challenger, it's my job to show you that, you know? Like if you're equivocating between two meanings of organic, I'll find a way to show you that. And then you'll go, oh, I see, you know?
Yeah, because isn't it up to the challenger to define the context by continuing the debate?
Yes, the direction of it's a dance.
Because we're not really communicating, as she just pointed out about organic, non-organic, and all of that. We're not really, the defender is, the challenger is the only one who knows the context. And that's where this clarification can come in.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean by that.
Okay, the sentence by itself is possibly not wrong depending on the context.
Oh,
and the two people, the challenger and the defender, are not really connected yet on it because of the issue of the word organic. So wouldn't it be up, the defender will keep doing what the defender's doing to to clarify, but it would be up to the challenger to actually eventually move towards the clarification
Right.
through the debate.
Yes, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I think the answer is yes. The challenger doesn't
Okay.
dictate content, but the challenger dictates, like, there's many ways that we can get at something. And the challenger's role, like all the creativity, well, not all, that's not even true. That's not even true. It's hard. There's no blanket statement I could make. But I think in terms of what we've said so far, all the creativity rests with the challenger. The defender is very limited in what they can say, right? The defender is just going to basically say yes, no, blah, but the challenger is going to say like, well, then what about this? And then what about that, Let me say a little more and see if that addresses what I think you might be getting at. Let's say that I took, I said, let's take the subject organic. It follows that there is a definition of it, right? So the answer, like between you and me, like the answer has to be yes, right? But let's say that the person says why, and say, oh, it follows that there is not a definition of it, right? And they'd say, okay, I accept. And say, it follows that you can't tell whether something is organic or not, because there is no definition of it, right? And at some point, the person would see their mistake. And if they didn't see their mistake, I'd keep going, I'd keep showing. Because if I know they're wrong, there's a reason I know they're wrong. There's something that I'm seeing, so I need to show them that, right? And if it turns out that what I'm seeing is incorrect, that will become clear by the answers that they'll give. Anything that any of us believes, like any statement, like the sky is blue, or God is good, like any statement that we believe, either there's a reason we believe it or there's no reason we believe it, right? If there's no reason we believe it, that's going to become really clear very quickly in debate. If there's a reason we believe it, we need to think about what that is, and then we can put that forth as our reason. Yes, Linda?
If I'm following this, it seems like the question why is oriented differently than the usual question why. If you say something and I'm confused or I don't understand it fully and I want more information, and I say why, I'm going to get the challenge, sort of a challenge. It's more like a challenge, I think, than is that
on the
accurate?
face, like you're right on the face of it, yes. But again, it's helpful to understand the rationale for it, because remember, even though it's called a debate, nobody's trying to win. It's not like ha 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 ha, you were wrong, I win. That's not, no, that doesn't matter, So it's just the way it's systematized. If you aren't sure about something, right? If you're not sure about something, then you're going to pick one way or the other. You're going to say, well, let's say that the answer is this. Now show me. Am I wrong? Is that wrong? You see what I mean? Like, for example, if somebody said, a good example. Like if I said, a tomato is a vegetable, and the person's like, oh, I don't know. Is a tomato a vegetable? I'm not sure, right? Then the person could answer in such a way, they would pick one side basically and say, well, basically it's like, okay, let's say that it is, then what? And then we'd have a debate to see if it works or to see if I can prove to you that it's not. Or you could say, well, I don't know, like, well, let's say that it isn't. Then we'd have that debate, right? It's just that we don't kind of squint our eyes and say, let's say, like, it's implicit, like we just say, okay, it is. Or you say, no, it's not, So the subject, the tomato, it follows that it's a vegetable. So you either say, I accept, or you'd say, why? And if you say why, it's like, okay, then let's say it's not a vegetable. I say, okay, I accept. It's
Where, sorry.
we're still answering the question of why. We're just doing it in a very indirect way. We're still answering the question of why. We're just showing that basically it's like the answer to your question of why is that if you say that it's not, then you're going to run into contradictions.
And otherwise, I guess if you were going to give a reason for the why, it would take us out of the debate format, and it's very incremental this way.
Right.
I think.
Now, I, as the challenger, though, I can give a reason. You know, I can't, if you say the subject, tomato, it follows that it is a vegetable. And you say, why? I'll say, it follows that it's a vegetable because it's a plant. I can do that too, you know, as the challenger. Okay, sorry. So, Brett, I think you had a...
Yeah, so if you're going through with the tomato debate, can you arrive at some point where you say, in some instances, tomatoes are vegetables, and in some instances, it's fruits through the debate format?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. So there will be a way that we can do that. Now, to be clear, though, now this is this is where this stops being simple, you know. Remember, there's a difference between saying the subject, a tomato, is a vegetable, versus saying whatever is a tomato is necessarily a vegetable. But maybe that doesn't even pertain to this example. I don't know. By the way, the reason I thought of the example of a tomato being a vegetable is that I typed into ChatGPT all the rules of Tibetan debate, and I said, Tibetan debate me, and it did, and it was insanely good at it. And at first I was the challenger and it was the defender. It's like, okay, now you be the challenger. And it said, okay, take the subject, a tomato, it follows that it is a vegetable. That's what it came up with. I didn't come up with it. It came up with that. It's like, that is a good example. That is a good, anyway. The world is about to change, guys. Anyway. Take the subject, ChatGPT. It follows that it is intelligent. You're going to take a position side or not. Why? Take the subject, ChatGPT. It follows that it is not intelligent. So you have to accept, right? Okay, so now
why?
Sorry?
No, yes, I accept, yeah, but yeah, it is artificial intelligence. Suppose if I want to say it is artificial intelligence, how do I say that? Suppose if I want to, instead of intelligence, I want to say it is artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So if you ask the same questions, how do I make you to say that it is artificial intelligence?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So, so let me say a couple of things. So first of all, be mindful of this. We say, ChatGPT, it follows that it is intelligent. Why? ChatGPT follows that it is not intelligent. I accept. That's not the end of the debate. That's the beginning of the debate, right? So first of all, we don't have to worry. It's not like I haven't proven anything to you by just saying that, right? That's not the point. It's like, okay, now we can debate. Now we're debating, you know? That's the idea, first of all. Second of all, you know, Dinesh raises a great question, which is like, there's a reason that I'm not accepting that it's intelligent, right? It might be a subtle distinction that I want to make. So how do I voice that, right? And the answer is you don't. Not until and unless I, as the challenger, give you an opportunity to. So this helps us to let go of attachment, right? Because the question is it intelligent? That's the question I'm asking, yes or no. So if you're saying, no, it's not intelligent, it's artificially intelligent, then the answer is no. It is intelligent, it's not. No, it's not. No, you know? And then we can have a debate about that. If I never end up giving you the opportunity to say it's artificially intelligent, right? Then when we're done with that debate, then you can turn it around and say, okay, I'm going to challenge you now. The subject ChatGPT, it follows that it's artificially intelligent. Then you'll have your opportunity in the next debate. If it doesn't come up in this one, you see? It probably would come up in this one though, probably. Or at least very possibly, because there are a couple more things that the challenger can do besides just fling consequences. Okay, so far we've talked about how the challenger can fling consequences. Another thing that the challenger can do is the challenger can ask the defender for a reason for why they believe what they believe, for this very reason, for this very purpose. You know, so if I say, take the subject ChatGPT, it follows that it is intelligent. Why? Take the subject ChatGPT, it follows that it is not intelligent. I accept. Okay, so the subject ChatGPT, it's not intelligent because?
Because it's programmed with input from a person, and that person may not be intelligent, and all it's doing is going if, then, and, or.
That is the best reason for this I've yet heard, because it was programmed by a person and that person may not be intelligent. That is great. And it's just going with and or. Yes. Okay. So now Isla made a couple of claims there, right? Isla made a claim that ChatGPT is programmed by a person who might not be I'll just stick with that part of it just for the ease of expression. That ChatGPT was programmed by a person who may or may not be intelligent. That's one claim that Isla made. And Isla also made the claim that whatever is programmed by a person who may or may not be intelligent is necessarily not intelligent. She made that claim in giving that reason. In giving that reason, she's presupposing both of those things. Right? So I, as the challenger, would have her spell that out. So I would say, okay, so you gave that reason. So it follows that the subject, ChatGPT, was programmed by a person who may or may not be intelligent. And she'd accept because she just made that claim. Say, okay, and it follows that whatever was made by a person who may or may not be intelligent is not intelligent. And she'd accept because she made that claim, unless she realizes that she made a mistake, in which case she'd kind of take it back, in essence. Right? Okay. So take the subject, a dog. It follows that it is a reptile. Why?
Why?
Okay. Take the subject, a dog. It follows that it is not a reptile. You accept, right? Okay.
Correct.
Challenger, here's what I'm going to, I have a choice as to what I can do. So here's what I'm going to choose to do. I'm going to choose to say the subject, a dog, it is not a reptile because, and now you have to give me a reason, right? So that's the way you frame it. So notice just a couple of things. If I, as the challenger, if I want to ask you for the reason that you believe what you believe, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to give you a part of a syllogism, not a consequence, not a consequence. I'm not going to say the words it follows, okay? So I'm going to say the subject, a dog, it is not a reptile because, and I'm going to say the word because, and I'm going to stop. So whenever you hear a part of a syllogism that ends with the word because, then you know now you have to fill in the blank and you have to give a reason. And when you give the reason, you're committing to that subject being that reason and to there being pervasion between that reason and the predicate, just to say it in a simple way, right? So let me ask you guys, whoever wants to answer this, the subject, a dog, it is not a reptile because?
It's a mammal.
Beautiful, because it is a mammal, okay? So now you guys as the defender have put that forth. So now I'm going to just check, I'm going to kind of make you commit to what you just said. I'm going to say, okay, the subject, a dog, now I'm going to say it follows that it is a mammal.
Accept.
It follows that whatever is a mammal necessarily is not a reptile.
I accept.
Beautiful, because that's what you guys just basically implied, right? So now you've accepted it formally. Now the record shows that that's what you're saying. You get it? Okay. Okay. So that's enough. So the challenger can fling consequences. The challenger can give a part of a syllogism to get a reason. And the other, I'll just give you this just to round the whole thing out. The other thing that the challenger can do is, if the defender has accepted that something exists, right? Not just accepted a statement, but accepted like there is a blank, like there is you know, like a dog that is not a mammal, let's say, right? There's something like there is an existing version of that. Then the challenger can say, well, pause it. Pause it. Pause it means give me an example of it. Another way of saying it is give me a subject for us to now build a debate on. If I say, I'm the challenger, it follows that there is a definition of dog. If you accept, then I can, if I want, say, well, pause it, meaning give me an example of it. And there's only going to be one example. So basically I'm saying, what is the definition of dog in that case, right? What if I say this? Okay, it follows that whatever is a mammal is necessarily a dog.
Why?
Why? It follows that whatever is a mammal is not necessarily a dog.
I accept.
It follows that there is something which is a mammal, but is not a dog.
I accept.
Pause it.
Mammal, not a dog, like cat.
A cat. Okay? So now I'll say, okay, it follows that the subject, a cat, is a mammal.
I accept.
It follows that the subject, a cat, is not a dog.
I accept.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now the debate would continue from there. I mean, this debate would probably not continue from there because you're right, you know, it's very clear. But in principle, the debate would continue from there. But that is how we're establishing everything. What is it that we're saying? What is it that we're claiming, right? What is it that, like, you know, like we're kind of, in my imagination, this is how I think of it. It's like, let the record show, you know, that the defender just said that a cat is not a dog. Let the record show that the defender said that a cat is a mammal. You know, that's what we're kind of saying. Yeah, Linda?
Would you, instead of saying why, would the two other statements be more specific, like checking that the reason is established, or if there's pervasion?
Good question. Those are more specific, but those only make any sense if I gave a reason. You see? So if I fling a statement without a reason, then that doesn't apply. So that's why your only options are say yeah or why, right? But if I give, then you can't say why. I just told you why, right? So your only options are to say, well, that reason is not established, or to say there is no pervasion.
I'm going to have to draw out some sentences and look at them. Yeah. Thanks.
There's never going to be a situation where you could say why, or you could say the reason is not established or there's no pervasion. It's either you're in a position where you can say one of them, or you're in a position where you can say the other, right?
So you never apply pervasion to just to a statement without a reason, for example. Okay.
Exactly. Okay, so now we can have some fun. Ready? Now we can have some fun. So, okay. Before this was very boring, but now we can have some fun. Okay. Take the two mammal and sea creature. Sea creature, mammal and sea creature. It follows that you can tell me how they compare. Yeah.
Accept.
Good. Okay. Pause it. How do they compare? You say between them, either you say between them there are so many possibilities, or they're mutually exclusive or inclusive.
I know what I want to say, but I've forgotten the correct terminology to express it with.
So what is it that you mean to say?
Sea creatures are found in the sea and mammals are not.
So you want to say that they're mutually exclusive?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay, so you're going
Oh.
to now let's just see how this plays out. Ready? So you're going to say they're mutually exclusive, right? So so I'm going to just confirm that that's what you mean. It follows that the two, mammals and sea creatures, are mutually exclusive.
I accept.
Okay. Now I'm just going to taunt you, and I'm saying it follows that they're not mutually exclusive. It doesn't. I would say that no matter what. Okay. So I would say it follows that. Now this is just to clarify that you're clear that you're saying this. It follows that whatever is a mammal is necessarily not a sea creature.
I accept.
It follows that whatever is a sea creature is necessarily not a mammal.
I accept.
Okay. So far, all I'm doing is I'm just drawing out everything you just said. Now I'm gonna knock you. Ready? Take the subject, a whale. It follows that it is not a sea creature because it is not a mammal.
Wait, is a whale? What is a whale? It's something else, right? I accept. I don't know.
So just for the sake of the example, I'll tell you that a whale is a mammal. It's true. You just take my
Oh
word.
shit! Sorry.
Yeah.
Failed this debate.
No. This is how that's the point. That's the point of debate, right? So here we go. So ready? So here's where we're at. I said, so take the subject, a whale. It follows that it is not a sea creature because it is a mammal. So now, what is the correct answer that you have to give there?
I have to say, wait, say again what you said. It follows that.
The subject, a whale. It follows that it is not a sea creature because it is not because it is a mammal.
I'm thinking I'll either say I accept or I'll ask you why.
Well, you can't ask me why because I told you the reason, right? So you can
Right.
either
Okay.
or say the reason is not established or say there's no pervasion.
Right. Okay. So from my poor understanding of mammals and sea creatures, I may say to you there is no pervasion, because I feel like it does not meet either category.
That is correct, right? That is the correct answer. So I'll just kind of again draw out from you. So it follows that if it is a mammal, it could be a sea creature.
I want to reject this. The reason is not established.
So I didn't give a reason.
No, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. So you can either accept or you can say why.
Okay, I'll say why. Why?
So it follows that if it is a mammal, it can be a sea creature because a whale is a mammal and a sea creature.
But let's say I still am not aware that a whale is a mammal and not a sea creature. How would I respond to that to keep it going?
Then you'd say if you believe that a whale is not a mammal and a sea creature, then you would say the reason is not established.
Okay.
I need to prove that to you. But just for the fun of the example right now, let's say that you realize like, okay, fine, yes, a whale is a mammal and a whale is a sea creature, right? Then you'd have to say, okay, I accept.
Okay. Yeah.
And then what I do is I then state again, well, in that case, it follows that there is something that is both a mammal and a sea creature. You'd accept, right?
I accept.
Okay, so then I'd say sa, because you just accepted something that you had denied earlier. And so it follows that the two, mammal and sea creature, are not mutually exclusive because there is something that is both of them.
You would say that, or I would say that as a conclusion.
So then you'd have to accept.
Gotcha. I accept. No choice.
So no, this is it. So then what I would do is I would say sa, 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 3 times. What that means is that your root thesis, like the first thing that you said right out of the gate with this debate, you've now denied. So this debate is finished.
Mm,
You see what I mean?
great.
This debate is finished, meaning your original thesis was that a whale and the original thesis was that mammal and sea creature are mutually exclusive. And now you've seen the error of your ways and you're like, okay, no, they're not mutually exclusive. Finished. But now I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to start another debate. So I'm going to say, it follows that you cannot posit. It follows that you cannot posit how the two compare, a whale and a mammal and a sea creature. Now I'm opening this up to everybody again. It follows that you guys are not smart enough. It follows that you cannot posit how the two compare, mammal and sea creature. What do you say to that?
They're both living.
You are absolutely right. You are absolutely
Why?
right. But yeah, you have to either accept or say why. Okay, so say why. Oh, okay, say why. Well, it follows that you can posit how the two compare, mammal and sea creature.
Accept.
Good. So posit it. How do they compare?
Both are animals, but both mammals and sea creatures are animals.
Good. Sorry.
Is
this
it 3P?
Sorry?
Oh.
Is it 3P?
3P. Okay, we're going to go with 3P. Okay. Between them, there are 3 possibilities. Okay. I'm going to say it follows that there are not 3 possibilities. So now I'm going to say, okay, you're saying there's 3 possibilities. So it follows that you can posit something that is both a mammal and a sea creature. You accept?
Yeah, I accept.
We'll posit.
The whale.
It follows, take the subject, the whale, it follows that it is a mammal.
I accept.
Take the subject, a whale, it follows that it is a sea creature.
I accept. Is this just me or is anyone else here?
So now it's you. Okay. Now you said there's 3 possibilities. So now I'm going to ask you, which way does the pervasion go? Whatever is a blank is necessarily a blank.
Oh, whatever. What is this? Oh, I don't know. Whatever. I don't know. I just know that there's sea creatures that aren't mammals. That's all I know, and I don't know how to put it.
There's sea creatures that are not mammals. So then you'd say whatever is a mammal is necessarily a sea creature, but whatever is a sea creature is not necessarily
a mammal. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
3, isn't it?
So
because it only goes one way.
Yeah. So what you're saying is whatever is a mammal is necessarily a sea creature, but whatever is a sea creature is not necessarily a mammal.
But then whatever is mammal isn't necessarily a sea creature. So no, I'm not saying that either.
Follows that there isn't a pervasion in either direction.
I accept.
It follows that there are not 3 possibilities between them because there's not a pervasion in either direction.
So what is it then?
Okay, so it follows that you guys can't posit correctly how the two compare, a mammal and a sea creature.
Someone's got to be able to do this.
Why?
It follows that you can posit correctly how the two compare.
Accept.
Posit.
4 possibilities.
Okay, but now it's going to be different. It follows that there are 4 possibilities. So posit something that is both a sea creature and a mammal.
A right whale.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, a right whale.
Right whale?
Yeah, just a type of whale.
Okay, I did. Okay, so take the subject, a right whale. It follows that it is a sea creature.
Accept.
Take the subject, a right whale. It follows that it is a mammal.
Accept.
Perfect. Now, give me, now posit an example of something that is a mammal, but is not a sea creature.
An elephant.
Take the subject an elephant. It follows that it is a mammal.
Accept.
Take the subject an elephant. It follows that it is not a sea creature.
Why? Oh, wait. Yeah. Why? Right.
It follows that it is not a sea creature.
Oh,
It follows that it is a sea creature.
not a sea creature.
Okay, okay, good. No, you're good. Okay, so now posit something that is a sea creature, but is not a mammal.
A shrimp.
Take the subject a shrimp. It follows that it is a sea creature.
Yes.
Take
Accept.
the subject a shrimp. It follows that it is not a mammal.
It is not a mammal. Accept.
Now posit something that is neither a mammal nor a sea creature.
A bird.
A bird. Take the subject a bird. It
Oh,
follows that
oh, well, let me be more specific on that one. A robin.
a robin. Take the subject a robin. It follows that it is not a sea creature.
Yes. Accept.
Take the subject a robin. It follows that it is not a mammal.
Accept.
The gods are victorious. Well done. You win. Right? You did it. That's it. It's 4 possibilities. Right? Meaning there are some things that are mammals and sea creatures. There are some things that are mammals but are not sea creatures. There are some things that are sea creatures but not mammals. And there are some things that are neither mammals nor sea creatures. Right? Now, if we were like really going at it, I wouldn't have left it so easy. I would have asked you like, I would have said, you know, something like, you know, take the subject, a robin. It follows that it is not a mammal. You accept. Take the subject. So the subject, a robin. It is not a mammal because I'd make sure that you really get what you're saying, right? But I was taking your word for it for now, right? Are you guys kind of getting more or less?
I don't understand the difference between 3P and 4P in practice. That's the problem. Like I can't think, what is it?
Here we go. Ready? Starting a new debate with all of you guys. The subject, the two, a chair and a piece of furniture. It follows that you can't posit how they compare. I'm always going to be belligerent, so.
Why?
It follows that you can posit how they compare.
Accept.
Beautiful. Okay. So posit. How do they compare? Now, you can say mutually inclusive, mutually exclusive, 3 possibilities or 4 possibilities.
Yeah, see, that would take me 10 minutes to work out because I don't.
In the beginning it does, right? In the beginning it does, but I promise you, I'm not going to say because it becomes second nature for common everyday objects. It definitely does. But when you start getting into abstract things, it still takes me 10 minutes. But does anybody want to take a stab at it, Linda?
Well, I just had a comment that drawing the circles really helps me a lot.
Okay.
You know, like chair and furniture.
Yeah. That can be a helpful way to start. Eventually we'll move past that. And we'll
Sure, because that's pretty concrete, but
it can be a very helpful way to start. So based on that, what would you say between chair and piece of furniture?
3P.
3 possibilities. Follows that it is not 3 possibilities. Posit something that is both a chair and a piece of furniture.
An armchair.
Take the subject an armchair. It follows that it is a chair.
Accept.
Take the subject an armchair. It follows that it is a piece of furniture.
Accept.
Beautiful. Now, which way does the pervasion go? Because you said it's 3.
So what is a chair? I'm not sure how to word this, but what is a chair is necessarily a piece of furniture, but whatever is a piece of furniture is not necessarily a chair.
Bingo. It follows that whatever is a piece of furniture is not necessarily a chair. So posit an example of something that is a piece of furniture, but is not a chair.
A piece of furniture that is not a chair is a table.
Take the subject a table. It follows that it is a piece of furniture.
Accept.
Take the subject a table. It follows that it is not a chair.
Accept.
Now posit something that is neither a piece of furniture nor a chair.
Something that is neither a piece of furniture nor a chair is this cup.
This cup. Take the subject to that cup. It follows that it is not a piece of furniture.
Accept.
Take the subject that cup. It follows that it is not a chair.
Accept.
The gods are victorious. Right? Now I'm going to come back and make that a little bit more difficult in just a moment. But before I do, I just wanted to check in with Isla. Do you see, like, so chair and piece of furniture are three possibilities. Whatever is a chair is a piece of furniture. Whatever is a piece of furniture might or might not be a chair. Right?
Yeah, I understand the logic for both the one with Brett and the one with Linda. I just can't go. So if you say to me, right, okay, which one is it? I'm going to have to go, okay, is it mutually exclusive? Okay, what's mutually exclusive? Is this? Okay, is it that? No, okay, is it this? Okay, is it this one? And yeah, I'm okay, maybe not 10 minutes is an exaggeration, but yeah, I don't know. I have to literally blow by blow through every single one to work out what it is.
So two things about that. One is that with practice, the Tibetans have a saying, nothing gets harder with practice, right? So that's number one. And number two, like this is a friendly debate for the purpose of helping us clarify things ourselves. So anytime we're trying to work out an answer and it's taking a very long time, just say an answer and see what happens. You know, okay, I'm not, so let's say it's 3P, then walk me through that. Like the debate is meant to help you clarify, you know, so you don't have to do all the thinking on your own in a way. Does that make sense? You guys kind of see what I'm saying when I say that?
Yes, thank you.
Good. You don't have to give the right answer. Like you want to make a good faith effort. You don't want to give an answer that you know is wrong, but you don't have to get it right. That's the whole purpose of this, is to figure out when we are getting it right and when we're not. If we had to know that before we could start debating, there would be no reason to debate. Right? Okay, so somebody at some point accepted, I know who it was, but I'm not naming any names. Somebody at some point accepted that an armchair is a chair. Yes? Okay, I agree, by the way, I agree. But I'm gonna say the subject, an armchair, it is a chair because like anybody who wants can.
Because you can sit on it.
Because you can sit on it, okay? That's the reason that was given. So take the subject, an armchair, it follows that you can sit on it.
I accept.
So it follows that whatever you can sit on it is necessarily a chair.
Why?
It follows that it is not the case that whatever you can sit on is necessarily a chair.
I accept.
So it follows that the fact that you can sit on it is not a reason that proves that an armchair is a chair.
I accept.
So now take the subject, an armchair, it is a chair because anybody?
Because it has two arms, a seat, and some feet.
Because it has two arms, a seat, and some feet. 2 arms, a seat, and some feet. Yeah? Okay. So take the subject, an armchair, it follows that it has 2 arms, a seat, and some feet.
Can I clarify 2 armrests? Not arms.
Yeah. Has 2 armrests, a seat,
And feet.
Okay. So it follows that the subject, an armchair, it has 2 armrests, a seat, and some feet. Okay. It follows that whatever has 2 armrests, a seat, and some feet is necessarily a chair.
Oh, I think so, but Linda disagrees.
It's making my head hurt, but what about it?
Oh.
I shouldn't say.
Well, So let's say, so we're accepting that whatever has two armrests, a seat, and some feet is necessarily a chair. Linda, what were you thinking?
In terms of an object, a car.
A car. Take the subject, a car. It follows that it is a chair because it has two armrests, a seat, and some feet.
Why?
I gave you a
No,
reason.
no, sorry. Because the reason is not established. Is not established.
Yes, okay. So take the subject, a car. It follows that it does not have two armrests, a seat, and some feet.
I agree.
Okay, all right. Now, again, for fun, there's so many places we could go, right? There's so many places we could go, but I'll stop there so we don't get too far in the weeds with that. I'll come back. Now, you did say, didn't you? So it follows that whatever has two armrests, a seat, and some feet is necessarily a chair. Take the subject, a bar stool that has armrests. It follows that it is a chair because it has two armrests, a seat, and some feet.
Yeah, it would be because bar stools don't have armrests and seats and feet. Bar stools have no armrests.
But okay, so let me put it this way. Take the subject, a bar stool, to which I affix two armrests. It follows that it is a chair because it has two armrests, a seat, and some feet.
Agree.
Okay. So so we're agreeing that a bar stool, when it has armrests attached, becomes a chair. It's and again, this is the thing. There's no set place that we can go. So I'll just show you one place that I could go. Take the subject, that bar stool. It follows that it was not a chair before I affixed armrests to it.
Agree.
It follows that it became a chair when I affixed armrests to it.
Agree.
It follows that whatever doesn't have armrests is necessarily not a chair. It doesn't follow, okay? That doesn't follow, but let's see what happens. It follows that whatever doesn't have armrests is necessarily not a chair.
Oh, it's not right, but I don't know which one. I don't know which one. Reason or pervasion.
Well, that's because I didn't give you a reason. So you're very
Okay.
wise. I'm just saying, I'm just flinging something at you. It might sound like it's not random, but the truth is what I'm pretty
It's
random.
wrong. I just don't know the answer. Does anybody know how to say it? Why it's
Why?
wrong?
Why?
Why? I'm just saying, whatever doesn't have armrests is necessarily not a chair. And if you don't agree with that, you'd say why. Okay? So you're going to say why. So I'm going to say, okay, then it follows that there is something that doesn't have armrests, but is a chair. So posit an example of something that doesn't have armrests, but is a chair.
A chair without armrests.
Good. Take the subject, a chair without armrests. It follows that it doesn't have armrests.
I accept.
A chair without armrests, it follows that it is a chair.
I accept.
Beautiful. Now we're debating. So here's where I'm going to go next. Ready? Take the subject, chair. It follows that there is a definition.
I accept.
Posit. Good luck.
A chair is something which is designed to be intentionally sat upon, regardless of whether it has armrests or not.
Okay. Something that is intentionally designed to be sat upon.
Yes.
Okay. Take the subject, a saddle. It follows that it is a chair.
The reason is not established.
The reason.
I'm sorry, why?
The saddle is a chair because it is intentionally designed to be sat upon.
Okay. Sorry, I want to reject, but I can't remember the correct response to say.
You say the reason is not established, or there is no pervasion.
There is no pervasion between. Oh no!
It follows that it is not the case that whatever is designed to be sat upon is necessarily a chair.
Well, I have to accept, don't I?
It follows that the subject intentionally designed to be sat upon is not the definition of chair.
I accept.
Okay. So somebody else want to give it a try?
There's a problem here because the Google definition of chair is a separate, mind you, the word seat, a separate seat for one person, typically with a back and 4 legs. But the problem is a human has a back and 4 legs. So the key thing must be the seat with the back and the 4 legs.
If the subject Google, it follows that it is always right.
Why? No, maybe we should try ChatGPT instead of Google now.
That's
ChatGPT,
from the Oxford Dictionary, by the way, on Google.
You've got to debate it, right? It has, whether it's Google or ChatGPT or an encyclopedia, it has to be put to the test, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, and this is what I think you'll find. You'll find that dictionaries in general, the definitions they give are very, very helpful to help somebody who doesn't know what that word means to understand what the word means, like to get a sense of it, you know? But I don't think a lot of the time they'd stand up to debate. You know, I don't think they meet the criteria of definition the way we understand it in the context of debate. But that's an empirical question. Brett?
So I'm looking at, I guess, the Webster's definition of chair, and one of the definitions uses the word typically. When we're debating here, we're debating necessarily, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
but you could include whatever word you want. So typically, it's like, let's say that the definition of chair is an object designed to be sat upon that typically has legs, let's say. Okay, then I'd say, okay, it follows that the subject, well, actually, that's interesting. Hold on, let me think about it for a second. What I was about to say isn't true. Okay, I would say take the subject, this chair right here that I'm sitting on. It follows that it is an object designed to be sat upon that typically has legs because of being a chair, right? And then you'd find that it doesn't actually have legs. Anyway, my point is that even then, that's not that definition. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not really going to cut it for chair, I don't think. Right?
So is that one of the outcomes then of these debates, is coming to a quite clear definition of what phrases or terms actually mean?
Yes, that is one of the uses of debate. Yes, that is one of the uses of debate.
So how do we get to the definition of a chair then?
We keep trying. We keep trying, but I'll tell you this. I picked the word chair on purpose. I picked the example chair on purpose because when I was in college, I took a class on semantics, and our project for the semester was to come up with the definition of chair. And we weren't able to do it by the end of the semester. That is a very hard one. Most things aren't hard like that. Most things we can do. But I think because chair is just such an ancient word, you know, that it's encountered so often, it's able to take very different definitions in different contexts. Whatever the definition of chair turns out to be, it's going to have the word or in it a bunch of times. Right.
Is this where we start to enter the realm of philosophy rather than debate? I mean, I know the two are obviously connected, but at what point would, you know, in the debate or after the debate, would there be the working out of a semantic or ontological system to like work out actually what a chair is? Or was this maybe something I'm thinking too far ahead about? I don't know.
It all depends on what is the matter of interest to the person debating, you know, to the defender, really, I guess. You know, like if you're curious about the ontological status of a chair, you could absolutely go through that in debate. If you feel like, I mean, if you feel like, well, I don't know the definition of a chair, but I don't care, then you don't have, you know what I mean? Like, you only have to figure out what you care about. But if you don't know what the definition of a chair is and you don't care, you don't have to, investigate it. But you also can't go around making claims about what is and isn't a chair because you don't know the definition. Right?
I wonder if it matters in the sense that what you're ultimately going to be debating about is fundamental truths. And therefore, a chair is like a concept. I mean, everything's a concept to a degree, but when we make concepts about fundamental or the nature of reality, which is the point, and what exists in Buddhist terms, those concepts presumably are much sounder, that's terrible grammar, than a chair, for example. Does that make sense?
I just didn't catch the word you said. Those examples are much what?
I don't know the right word. Sounder's the wrong word, and it's terrible grammar. They're more not real. They're more like, I mean, chairs, like, it's a chair. It's a thing you sit on. But if you're talking about a truth of some kind in Buddhism, it's far more important or existential than a chair. Maybe that's the right word. So that's where I'm kind of going with it. So maybe things like chair and that, it doesn't matter. Whereas with a fundamental truth, and obviously that's the kind of things you want to be debating, what's the nature of reality, then that maybe is easier in a way because there's more substance to it maybe than a chair. I don't know does that make any sense?
I think on a pragmatic level, you're probably right. Meaning it wouldn't be worth our time somebody could argue it's not worth our time to spend decades debating what is a chair, whereas it might be worth our time to spend however long debating the ultimate nature of phenomena, if that's what can lead us to liberation and enlightenment, right? So on the
Or would you get semantic issues with fundamental concepts as well as the chair? Or is it just a chair that's awkward, or would you get the same problem?
Chair is the single most difficult example that I personally know of, right? That's just my own limited, I've only tried so many things, but absolutely, like, people could be conceptualizing two different things. Yesterday, my husband and I were on a road trip, and I finally got him to do a Tibetan debate with me, like he doesn't usually, because he had a question about the concept of Dharmakaya, which is like a pretty deep concept in Buddhism. And we started talking about it without debating, and we weren't getting anywhere. And I said, hold on a minute, take the subject Dharmakaya. And then we kind of did it that way. And what became clear is that he was alternating between two different definitions in his head, So the same thing can happen there too, So I said, okay, posit the definition of Dharmakaya, and then things started to take a different direction, But whatever the case may be, pragmatically, whether we want to spend time debating this or not, this works for anything. There isn't anything for which you'd have to say this doesn't work. I used to think that let's say like ethical principles, let's say, were outside the scope of this, but I don't think that anymore either. Like, there are ethical consequences to our ethical claims, like anything at all that you can name and debate. It doesn't even have to exist. You could say, take the subject, the horns of a rabbit. It follows that it is not the real self because it doesn't exist. I think that's true. But I forget if it's in one of the chapters that we already read in the book, but Van Perdue, he talks about this story that supposedly happened in Tibet. So let me actually say one more thing before I say that. We will find that no matter how lofty what we're debating is, often the subjects that we'll be using are practical everyday things, you know? So we could be debating like the relationship between space and emptiness, let's say. But in the context of the debate, we could say, take the subject, a cup, you know, it follows that it has space because it has emptiness. You asserted the pervasion and so on and so forth. But the subject that we're using, the focus that we're using is a cup just to help us think about it. And in Tibet, they used to have a great prayer festival where people would come to Lhasa from like all over the country. And so there would be monks from different monastic universities meeting. And so always debate would always break out, you know. Debate is the national sport of Tibet. In Brazil, like anytime there's like a group of people together, soccer is going to break out at some point. In Tibet, anytime there's a group of monks together, debate is going to break out at some point. And so these two monks were debating some like deep philosophical topic, and they were using the subject a gold pot. You know, take the subject a gold pot. It follows that it is not you know, like it is not the form aggregate because of being empty of inherent existence, whatever. But gold pot, gold pot, gold pot. And they didn't finish the debate. And so when they came back next year, they ran into each other again and they were excited and they picked up the debate from where they had left off. And then this guy comes out of a store, you know, they're doing this in the street in front of a store. And this guy comes out of a store and he says, last year you were arguing about this gold pot. Now you're still arguing about the same gold pot. It's unbecoming for monks to be so attached. If you stop arguing, I'll give you each a gold pot. Right? And the point is that's not, there is no gold pot. Nobody's arguing about a gold pot. We're using that as a subject to understand how things relate to each other. Like if I say, how do the two compare mammal and sea creature? What we're really interested in is mammal and sea creature. But along the way, I'm going to say, well, posit an example. And you're going to say a right whale. You know, so now take the subject, a right whale. It is a mammal because it is a sea creature. And so we're using the subject, right, to as a basis to have a debate about, but it's not necessarily what the focus of the debate is. Does that make sense?
That's the difficulty though, your story, it's so true. You can't, I mean, I don't know what it's like where everyone else is, but here, especially in this area I'm in, it's really challenging because if you try and not even debate, but try and voice, okay, but what about this and why do you think that? And if you question like that, people, oh my God, I'm not arguing with you. And it's like, nobody's arguing. There's a difference between a discussion and an argument where you're hurling insults at people through anger. It's completely different. But especially if you have any amount of passion behind it, then it's like, oh my God, you're arguing. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Right. Right. No, it's very true. Like, you know, what I find sometimes is that I say, oh, I don't mean to argue. I'm genuinely trying to understand better. You know, sometimes that helps. But I think sometimes if that doesn't help, this is not a blanket statement. This is not a statement of pervasion. But sometimes it might be because the person is starting to realize that they don't really have a good reason for thinking what they're thinking, and sometimes that makes us uncomfortable, you know, and so we might just be kind of getting defensive in a way. And if that's the case, like I usually find it better to just drop it. No, it's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, you know. Yeah. So trying to think. Yeah, there's like a couple more fun little things that can happen in debate, but I think that we've covered all of the essentials. Like what we've covered so far, I think is enough for people to have any debate just about. And so we can talk about the fun little things next time we meet, but any lingering questions about what we've been touching on?
I don't have any questions personally, but I think it's clear to me at least that that in order to like become more fluent in the kinds of debates we were trying out today, it's very important to memorize the terminology or like find a good way to review it, you know, and make sure that the correct statement is being used to respond in each situation. Maybe that's just for me personally. I mean, you know, I think it comes back to the first thing. One of the things you said in one of the very first sessions was just that you've got to get used to the form before you can really move on in it. And now I'm seeing how important it is.
Right. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So here are the main things to review. Let me kind of spell them out so that you use your time most productively. So first of all, remember that there are two kinds of consequence that the challenger can fling. There's a simple consequence, and there's a complete consequence that has a reason. If a challenger flings a simple consequence, then the two options are to say, I accept, or to say why. And if you say why, if they then fling the reverse consequence, then you have to accept, just because you have to choose one way or the other, so you can choose. If they fling a complete consequence that has a reason in it, then you have three options. You can either say, I accept, or you can say the reason is not established, or you can say there is no pervasion, bless you. Am I going too quickly, or, okay. And important to remember, if the reason is not established, then that, if the fact is that the reason is not established, or you believe that the reason is not established, then that has to be the answer you give. You can't skip over that. So you would only say there is no pervasion if you think there's no pervasion, but you think that the reason is established. And you'd only say, I accept, if you think that the reason is established and you think that there is pervasion. So if I said the subject, Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal, all of that is true, because it is a penguin. I can't accept that, even though it's true that Snoopy is a mammal, I know that Snoopy is a mammal, I can't accept that. I'd have to say the reason is not established, right? And if somebody said, take the subject Snoopy, it follows that it is a mammal because it is an animal, okay? Well, it's true that Snoopy is a mammal, but that's not, so Snoopy is an animal, that's true, so the reason is established. Whatever is an animal is necessarily a mammal. No, there is no pervasion. So then I'd have to say there is no pervasion. Right, so the order is, first you'd say if the reason is not established. If it is established, then you'd say if there's no pervasion. If there is pervasion, then you'd say I accept. Okay. That's like the most, all of that is the most essential. Now, there's two other things that the challenger can do. The challenger can give you a fragment of a syllogism, right? They can give you a syllogism up to the word because and stop there. And so the subject blah, it is blah because, and then what you need to do is you need to provide a reason. And when whatever reason you provide, right, you are implying that that reason is established and that there is pervasion. Otherwise, you wouldn't be giving that reason. So that's what you're implying, right? So if I say, you know, the subject, Snoopy, it is a mammal because it is a dog, then I'm not just implying that Snoopy is a mammal, but I'm also implying that Snoopy is a dog and that whatever is a dog is necessarily a mammal, right? And then finally, if the defender accepts that something exists, that there is an example of something, like there is a definition of this, or there is something that is a mammal and a sea creature, then the challenger, if they want, they can say posit, meaning give me an example that we can debate. And you'd always answer by saying the subject, blah, because like you're offering up a subject for debate. Is that it follows that there is something that is a mammal and a sea creature. I accept, posit. The subject, a whale. Okay, then the subject, a whale. It follows that it is a mammal. It follows that it is a sea creature, right? So the subject, just in case this hasn't been clear, actually, I didn't say this. The subject of the debate, the subject that you're using is going to shift throughout the course of the debate, right? There's the root thesis, which, that's kind of like, in the like that's what ultimately we're trying to decide. But to establish things about that, we're going to be using different subjects along the way as examples, as bases, as things like that. Right. So if we're debating, is it true or not that all humans are mortal? Along the way, I might say, well, let's then take the subject, the Dalai Lama. Follows that he's mortal because he's human. So now the subject is the Dalai Lama, right? Until second notice, that's the subject. But what we're trying to establish is whether all humans are mortal, right? And then the next thing in order of importance, besides the things I just said, to review would be the ways that phenomena can compare to each other. Mutually inclusive, mutually exclusive, 3 possibilities, 4 possibilities. Let's do this. Let's go into breakout rooms for a little bit, and let's take the subject. You guys can pick. You can either do vegetable and fruit, or you can do vegetable and plant. Okay? But let's go into breakout rooms, and one person be the challenger, one person be the defender. The challenger asks how those two compare, right? The defender give an answer, and try out the debate for a little bit. We'll try that for 15 minutes, and then we'll regroup and see where we're at. How does that sound? Sound good? Okay, let me see then. How can I do that? Let's use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm just assigning them at random. Okay. We're gonna do this for 15 minutes. All right. See you guys on the other side.
You got a bit confused there.
Oh, did you? What? Well, let's wait for everybody to be here, and then I want to address questions that came up, because I think it would be helpful for everybody.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So did any questions come up? Somebody hinted that some have.
Yeah.
Did anybody?
Yes, this is Tammy and Morgan.
Okay.
We heard people debating while we were doing ours, and we're not sure what that happened.
Oh, I see. I think I assigned you to a breakout room with other folks. I do apologize for that. It was my mistake.
Oh, okay, no worries. Yeah, okay, because there were 2 people in it, I think. So
Yeah.
did you want all 4 of us to be together?
I think I just made a mistake. I apologize for that. I'll be more mindful in the future. Sorry.
No worries. And then we tried to do this, and it just fell apart.
Okay. Yes. That's the first time, right? This is the first time I sent you guys off to try it.
It fell apart.
How far did you make it?
Okay, the challenger said the subject, vegetable and fruit, it follows, are mutually exclusive. The defender said, I accept.
Okay.
Then the challenger said the subject, vegetable and fruit, are mutually exclusive because they have seeds. And the defender said, I accept.
That's sorry. I'm sorry to say that's where you guys fell apart.
Okay.
So the challenger said the subject, the 2 vegetables and fruit, follows that they're mutually exclusive. Now the defender said, I accept, right?
Yeah. Yes.
The defender has accepted. So the challenger has no business giving a reason now. When you've made the sale, stop selling, right? The defender has already accepted it, you see?
Okay.
And then there was another point of, yes.
Go ahead.
I think there was another point of confusion because you said that they both have seeds, right? But that is not quite relevant to the question of how they compare in the sense that we mean it in debate, That's completely irrelevant in the sense that that word is used in English. But in the sense that we mean it in debate, when we say, how do the 2 compare? What we're asking is there anything that is both of them? Is there anything that is one but is not the other? Is there anything that is the other but is not the one? Is there anything that is neither? You see? We can talk more about that. Let me just go around a little bit so I can hear other folks' questions too. Linda, I saw that you had.
A couple of things. Jenna has a botany background and I don't, so it made it really interesting. Kind of like, okay, I just agree on some of this. And the other part is we went on to try to make up something to debate, and one was the horns of a rabbit and a unicorn. And I just don't know what to think when there's something that doesn't exist.
Yes. When something doesn't exist and you ask how do the 2 compare, the answer is they don't compare. Right? How do the horns of a rabbit and a unicorn compare? The correct answer to that is they don't compare. And if the challenger says they don't compare because, you say they don't compare because they don't exist.
And is that the case if one doesn't exist in the?
The answer off the top of my head is yes, but I. I'm gonna say the horns of a
It
rabbit.
just puts it sort of in a strange.
No,
Yeah.
it is the answer, even if one of them doesn't exist. They don't compare. There aren't two things that you're comparing. You know, like either there's zero things that you're being asked to compare, or there's only one thing that you're being asked to compare. So there's no comparison.
So we can still label them, but they
Yeah,
don't exist.
They can be subjects in consequences here and there, but they don't compare. They don't compare.
Thank you.
I have a question about that, because then if you have horns of a rabbit and non-existence, how do the two compare? Then then the horns of a rabbit be its own predicate as an example of?
The horns of a rabbit are not the horns of a rabbit. Nothing is the horns of a rabbit.
Nothing is the horns of a rabbit. So horns of a rabbit cannot compare to non-existence.
No, the subject, horns of a rabbit, are non-existent, definitely. But it is not true that whatever is the horns of a rabbit necessarily isn't existent, because there is no such thing as whatever is the horns of a rabbit.
It's necessarily a non-existent.
Yeah. But that's not true, because there is no such thing in the first place. Like that's not the subject, the horns of a rabbit, it is a non-existent, right? Whatever is the horns of a rabbit necessarily is a non-existent. That's just not true. There's no such thing as whatever is the horns of a rabbit.
I see. Okay, because it doesn't exist. Okay.
Exactly.
Could it be the case? Could it be the case that you have a challenger who thinks something exists when it doesn't? So then the defender then has to go, right, well, no, and then yeah.
So let's say that the challenger thinks that the horns of a rabbit exist. And by the way, I realize we're over time, so if folks need to leave, I totally respect that. Just remember to dedicate if you have to leave. But let's say that the challenger believes that the horns of a rabbit exist, right? So then the challenger might say something, take the subject, the horns of a rabbit, it follows that it is impermanent, right? It is impermanent. Now the defender knows that it doesn't exist. So the real answer is why? You can't accept it. So the challenger might say, take the subject, the horns of a rabbit, it follows that it is not impermanent. I accept. Take the subjects, the horns of a rabbit, it follows that it is permanent. Why? Take the subject, the horns of a rabbit, it follows that it is permanent because it is not impermanent. There is no pervasion. You see? Like you just think about what's the truth and you stick to that. But now let's say that the challenger says, the subject, the horns of a rabbit, it is not impermanent because, then you can say, because it doesn't exist. Other questions?
So it's not more a question, it's more just a clarification. Unless anybody else has a question, does anybody else have a question? And I'll be quiet. Because questions are more important than clarification, I think.
Very kind. We'll go.
I had a, sorry.
No, please, then go ahead. We'll come back to Isla if you have time. Yes, Clara, I think.
Just quickly, we were struggling with how to start the whole thing, but then we, found page 59 where it says, how do the two compare? So we went through that. And we got to the last point here where it says, because, no fruit is a vegetable and no vegetable is a fruit. So there could be nothing, there couldn't be anything that is both a fruit and a vegetable. And then we were wondering, is that the end, or, where does it go from here?
Right. That's just like the seed, no pun intended, of a debate, So when you get to the end of that, you as the challenger now, it is clear to the challenger what the defender's view of the matter is, right? So if the challenger agrees, then the challenger could say, okay, fine, the end of the debate, nicely done. If the challenger disagrees, then the challenger will try to show the mistake, So I might say, if you say fruit and vegetable, they're mutually exclusive, I might say, take the subject, a tomato, it follows that it is not a vegetable because it is not a fruit. if I was that it's not a vegetable because it is a fruit. Like I might go into it that way, perhaps, and then that will lead in its own direction of debate. Now, even if the challenger agrees with the defender's position, the challenger is still trying to do a service for the defender, right? Like, it's not just like, what's the answer? Is that okay? Fine, So the challenger, the nice thing for the challenger to do, if they're able, would be to see if they can come up with a tricky example to test the defender's understanding with. And while we were in breakout rooms, like the thought occurred to me, like I was saying earlier, that the defender doesn't need to know the right answer. The same is true for the challenger also. This is all about figuring out the right answer. So the challenger doesn't need to know the right answer necessarily. You're trying things out, you're testing, and you're saying like, well, if we go this way, what happens? If we go that way, what happens? If they know the answer, then sure, they can use that too, but you don't have to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And does the challenger ever have to say what they actually believe, or they can just
Never. That is why the challenger only ever uses consequences and never syllogisms. Because in theory, if the challenger says a syllogism, oh, now they're on the hook. So the challenger is not going to do that. The challenger has plus ability. The challenger just uses consequences. Well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
bit like a coach?
Yes, exactly. Dinesh?
Actually, in our discussion, final confusion was like, how do we conclude the debate? Because in that example, there was no accept or something like that. See, usually when we say accept, the debate is almost over because we accepted the argument, isn't it? Like whatever challenger said. In this example, it was saying only yes, yes, yes. So if we want to conclude a debate, how do we conclude? Like by saying just accept? I accept?
There's two ways that a debate can conclude. One way that the debate can conclude is if the defender contradicts their root thesis. If the defender contradicts their root thesis, the challenger will go sa, and the debate is over. Now again, there's still time, so you can start another debate, like you can see what happens if you go a different way. The other way for a debate to end is basically if the challenger gives up. If the challenger kind of has gone at it every which way that they can think of, and it seems like the defender's position is unassailable, the challenger has nothing more that they can think to say, to test it, then the debate ends. Now, what's the formal way of ending it? There isn't one. It just ends. But Daniel Perdue in the book says that Westerners don't like that. And so Westerners demanded, like, we need some way to end the debate. So he made some up. He said, there's a phrase in Tibetan, I forget what the phrase is in Tibetan, but it literally means the gods are victorious. And he said, that's just an exclamation in Tibet that means Happy New Year. Like that's what they said. So like, let's just say, Lankielo. Thank you. Yeah, so he said, you want a phrase in Tibetan to say this. And he says, Tibetans, if they heard it, would be laughing. It's like, the debate is over, Happy New Year, But I think it's adorable, so I like to say it. The gods are victorious, But why would the challenger give up? The challenger would give up because even though this is all done for the sake of the defender's answers very likely will actually make the challenger understand things that they hadn't understood before. Like the challenger would say, like, oh yeah, well, then give me an example of something that is a mammal and a sea creature. And if the defender says the subject a whale, the challenger secretly in their mind will go, oh yeah, so now they understand something different, probably, perhaps, or if they say blah 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 blah, and the defender says there's no pervasion, they go, oh yeah, I guess there is no pervasion, like, so either the challenger will actually realize that the defender was right, and they'll see why, in which case then they'll end the debate, or they'll come to a point where they might feel like, I still am pretty sure that the defender is wrong, but I can't for the life of me think of how to prove that. So let's end the debate. I'll go think about it, read up on it, consult with somebody, and then we can pick up the debate again. You see? In either of those cases, or they might run out of time, or we say, okay, guys, let's go back inside, then, to be continued, right? So basically, those are the ways that a debate will end. With the one asterisk, like I said before, that even if the challenger does see that the defender is right, the challenger can still ask a few more questions just to make sure that the defender really, really gets it, because I'll say this really quickly, in Buddhist philosophy, we talk about the valid ways of knowing something and the invalid ways of knowing something. One of the invalid ways of knowing something is through faith, like just faith alone, right? In Buddhism, that's considered invalid. Now, there's different types of faith, right? There's faith without a reason, there's faith with a wrong reason, and there is faith with a correct reason. Faith with a correct reason is when somebody believes something for a reason, but they don't really get it. Like they just kind of memorized, like it's like I memorized, like, like I don't know, like oh, this pen is empty of resistance because it's a dependent arising. That's actually a correct reason, but the person doesn't get it. So that's still not a valid way of knowing. So the challenger is also trying to help the defender understand even the correct reason that they're positing, and Isla, would you like to clarify?
Okay, nobody else has anything, no? No, okay. So I kind of took it that what you'd asked us to do was a very niche part based on your review. You just wanted, how does this compare? So then I thought, okay, thinking about the chair, that the fruit and the vegetable, that's going to get messy really quickly, potentially, based on definitions of fruit. So we kind of agreed to go with the vegetable and the plant. Basically, and then I'd kind of for once got it right and thought that it was 3p, and I think we kind of decided it was actually 3p, and I could be wrong and we could have done it wrong, I don't know, but we found the page in the book and went, right, okay, what's our script here? And because we were able to go through the script accurately, then we were like, okay, right, well, we're done, what do we do now? So then we decided, right, okay, we'll just play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say, right, ask me again. Okay, fine, it's mutually, no, I think we started with mutually exclusive. And then I thought, right, okay, well, it's actually 3p. And then we kind of went with 4p. And then I kind of started to think, right, okay, well, what if I just say something completely ridiculous? Because somebody will at some point, because they don't actually know. So it was like, okay, what is a vegetable that's not a plant, basically? Well, banana, which is nonsense. So, yes. And I think what then came out of that was trying to remember where you are, because you have to prove, well, actually that's rubbish because the bananas are fruit, and then you have to kind of come back and go, right, okay, well, we're actually here. And I think that was quite interesting. I don't know if you want to comment, anyone, or
this is beautiful, the gods are victorious, that's perfect, like that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Like there's like a linear path, that you can take, but that path is going to branch out depending on the answers that are given, like the moment somebody makes a mistake, okay, now we have to stop before we continue, we have to stop here and we have to go down this path, then we have to return back and then continue down from there until we hit upon another mistake or another point that we're not sure of. Let's go down that path, we make our way back and we continue from there. And yes, working memory is a big part of it. It's not that I'm good at any aspect of this much, but the working memory part is definitely the one that I need to work on the most.
I think a notebook would be really handy, like in that instance, actually.
I agree. And I know that they don't do that in Tibet. So like, I'm too proud.
But then I think even with the 3p, I think that would have been a part of a huge bigger context. So then the jump back would have gone, okay, we're doing this 3P for some specific thing. So now we're going back actually to, you know, the children of the root thesis, if there were, or the root thesis itself. Yeah.
Now, one encouraging thing, I guess, is that the challenger has tremendous freedom. The challenger is the one who has to remember anything, really. Like the defender just answers whatever is asked, you know? The challenger is the one who has to remember, wait, where are we coming from? Where are we going? And so forth. So the good news is that the challenger has tremendous freedom. The challenger doesn't have to see a line of reasoning all the way through. The challenger doesn't have to come back the same way they came, you know? It's usually the most effective thing to do. But if you forget, it's not like there's nothing I can do. It's like, okay, then let me just go back. Let me ask you this again, or let me ask you a different question. If the challenger is stumped, they can just drop that line of inquiry and approach it from another side, you know? And one thing that's, I think, very helpful to do a lot of the time is to ask the defender to posit their definition of the subject. You know, you don't have to do it always, but a lot of the time, because that tells you what it is that they're thinking of, what it is that they're referring to. And if you think that their definition isn't good, then you can debate that. But if you feel like that definition is fine, but then that's what we're talking about. Right? Like, let's say if I say, take the subject a bank, it follows that you put money there. And the defender said, why? Say, take the subject a bank. It follows that you don't put money there. Say, I accept. Say, okay. Well, take the subject of bank. It follows that some people put money there. Say, why? The subject of bank follows that nobody puts money there. I accept. I'll be like, take the subject of bank. It follows that you can posit a definition of it. Right? Say, I accept, posit. The subject, the side of a river. Say, okay, now I see what's going on. You see, like, that's kind of how it would play out, you know? So that, and then I, as the challenger, I can do whatever I can either say, okay, so we're talking about the side of the river, so now let me talk about that. Or I can say, okay, that's not what I meant. So take the subject, a financial institution called a bank, you know? I'll adjust to fit, right? It's really cool. It's really cool, I think. The subject Tibetan debate follows that it's really cool. Don't answer that. Okay. So let's thank you. I think it's so awesome that everybody stayed over so long. It's really, really cool. So let's dedicate, and we think about every choice that we've made, everything that we've done in this time that we've been together has left something in its wake, something that will affect our mind. And so we think, may it affect our minds only in ways that will make us more and more compassionate, more and more loving, more and more joyous in our efforts to be of benefit, more and more clear and wise, so that we can be of ultimate benefit to all beings everywhere. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, what I would encourage you guys to do is, if you guys are able to set it up to get together in pairs or in groups or whatever, I think that's the best, and to keep practicing this. And if you can't, then what I would encourage you to do is to be on the lookout for arguments, right? I don't ask anybody to do this, but in a pinch, you could turn on the news. It's
no, don't do that. The news is awful.
I know. Once upon a time, that made sense, right? But I don't know. I don't know how it is with the BBC these days, but that's my anyway. But if you were to do that, it would take you about half a second before you heard somebody make some argument, right? But when you catch an argument, see how you would put it as a consequence. See, like the argument that they just made, how would it be formatted as a consequence, right? So if they said, well, Republicans are going to win because they're clearly in the lead in the polls, right? You say, okay, so the subject, Republicans, it follows that they are going to win because of being in the lead in the polls, right? And then see what would be your answer to that. How would you answer that? I accept, the reason is not established, or there's no provision. And a lot of the time also you find people make pseudo arguments where they just make a claim. And think about that. What would you answer? I accept or why? Cool. All right.
When is our next week, by the way? Because I get all confused.
Oh, yes. Well, we don't meet next week because it's Easter, I think, right? It is.
Is it the 26th? No, 16th? No, because this changed, didn't it?
So we are, let me double check.
16th.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, so we are on for the 16th.
Okay.
Next.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Great couple of weeks. Happy Easter.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.